decisions from the start.
Well, and if you could get some high school kids.
I think so, because.
But you could,
And Aubrey will.
Okay, I thought I'd contact Hospital.
I know, Aubrey. And they have an environmental science teacher over there.
All right, well, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order.
She's really good.
This is the December 16th meeting of the Environmental Action Committee. I'm Sarah Marsh. I am your chairperson, and I represent the citizens of Ward 1 on the City Council. Let's start with introductions.
I'm Peter Nierengarten. I'm the city's Director of Sustainability and Strategic Planning and the staff representative to the Environmental Action Committee.
I'm Sandy Formica. I'm the Executive Director of the Watershed Conservation Resource Center, and I'm here to speak tonight.
I'm Taylor Sohn. I'm a student reporter for the university.
Good.
I'm Garnet Wise. I'm one of your new nominees for the industrial representative term. I don't know if you want more introduction since you don't know me, but yeah, I went through the interview last week.
Was it grueling?
Not 5 minutes of grueling, yeah. No,
It's hardly grueling.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been, in environmental compliance for the manufacturing industry for 25 years or something like that. And then for the past 3 years, I've been with Waste Management as a project manager, and my only client is Walmart's home office. So that's where I'm focused now, on diversion and recycling and still compliance. We do as waste type stuff too.
Excellent. Well, thank you for volunteering for the committee, and welcome.
And I'm Dana Smith. I'm a citizen at large on this committee, and I'm also the sustainability coordinator for Fayetteville Public Schools.
Connie Crisp. I'm a citizen at large also, and retired teacher, and work with schools and with Dana.
Hi, I'm Richard Russell. I was installed as a member of a science discipline. I have a degree in geology and background in construction inspection and civil engineering design.
Excellent. Okay, well, I suspect we'll see a few more members straggle in. Did anyone have any announcements or anything prior to that, just to kill some time before?
No. I was going to make an announcement for Sandy. I know she's got to get out of here for something else.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought I'd
the Watershed Conservation Resource Center, we're having our staff holiday party tonight.
Okay.
So I am going to leave like at 6:20.
Okay, all right. Well, then let's get started then. Sandy, why don't you tell us about invasive species removal?
Okay. Well, this is a presentation that I put together for a workshop that was part of a river restoration conference, and they wanted more of a emphasis on the workshop was on establishing native vegetation. And when you guys originally asked me to speak, I said this would be the presentation I would speak from because I already had developed it. So I'm really excited to be able to share this with you because I put a lot of time and energy into it. And native plants are sometimes, when people do river restoration work or stream restoration work, it's kind of like, they'll just say, well, we're going to plant some trees, or, and actually you can go into a lot of depth trying to establish native vegetation, and we believe there needs to be a plan. So we do these, and as I go through this presentation, we go through these engineered designs where we focus on hydrology, but we also have a very heavy native vegetation component. And to really understand invasive plants and why we want to manage invasive plants, you have to understand native plants. So like if you got a cold or something, you take medicine to get rid of the virus or the bacteria, but your body just naturally replaces what you do need, right? You don't have to think about, oh, well, I'm going to get rid of this virus and then put something else there, right? It just happens naturally. But with invasives, you have to understand the meaning of them, and are they serving some function, especially in your city parks right now. So you need to think about, before you decide to take them out, what are you going to replace them with? what's going to come in instead? Is another invasive going to come in? Are you going to create a safety issue if you remove it from certain places? And so you have to understand, what are they serving right now? Because they've been around for a long time. Some of your invasives have come in, like, in the 1800s. So they've been, you know, some of them may be more recent. But, so they're sort of like an established fixture. And so when you first think about it, and even their name's invasive, it sounds like, whoa, let's have a war on the invasives. But, you know, and we do need to, but we need to be strategic about it. So I'm going to talk, I think, in the context of river restoration and establishing native plants. I think we can understand more about the function of the native plants and the removal of the invasives. Because, like, in the case of a city, you're going to have people who have landscaped yards, and they're going to have potentially some plants that we might call invasive that they like. Mimosa, for one. Like, we wanted to come in, and a lot of our some of our landowners are private landowners, and so we wanted to remove all the mimosa. Well, when your landowner's going, I love mimosa, and I have this wonderful childhood memory. Well, you have to walk away, and you're leaving the mimosa, even though it's going to create a gazillion seeds, and it's going you know, it's going to come into your restoration, but you can't always just take the invasive out. So, that one?
There.
Okay. So if you guys will bear with me, you're going to learn a little bit about river restoration tonight too, but a lot of the interest in native plants and removal of invasives have come from the river restoration projects that we've done in Fayetteville, and working with the Parks Department and the Engineering Department. So we take what's called a natural channel design approach, and this is just an example. This is Sweetbriar Park, and which is, does everybody know where Sweetbriar Park is? Peter, do you know? Do you know where it is?
I do, but I can't remember.
It is off of Old Missouri, and do you guys know where, it's not Rebecca, it's Sweetbriar Park Road, but that doesn't really help you.
It's by
Elaine.
Yeah, and it's
What's
by
the name of that
Paradise,
neighborhood over there?
the
Yeah, Paradise
golf
Valley
course.
Golf
It's
course.
not far from there,
Yeah.
so that at least gets you in the area.
Okay, and does everybody know Neocosco Creek?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is downstream of Gully Park, and this is before and after. So one of the things to notice here is,
So this is Neocosco Creek?
yes, this is Neocosco Creek, and this photograph, you're seeing private landowners' property, but you're also seeing park property. So where the big cut bank was is mostly on the park property, but some of it was on a private landowner's property. So you're seeing before and after vegetation. So whenever you decide that you want native landscaping or native vegetation, it also has to be in the context of, you know, if it's a place where there's a lot of park users. In this case, we want to reestablish the vegetation along this river to help control erosion. But at some point, it goes back to mowed grass. So the city, in this case, gave us about 25 to 35 feet that we could restore back into native vegetation that they do not mow anymore. And just to give you some more background on our design approach, we collect a lot of data in the field. We use a 40-step design process that involves reference reach, sites, and data. And as I said before, we do an engineered design, and we try to rebuild a channel that's going to be stable, that doesn't have the big eroding cut banks, and so forth. So this is just some other examples of before and after restoration. This is at south of town on Highway 71, the city of Brentwood, and this is the West Fork of the White River. So on the left side, that's the upstream part of the channel. We actually rebuilt most of this channel, and but the main point of seeing these photos is the vegetation. This has a wetland component, and so these are just some before and after pictures. And you guys can ask me questions anytime, okay? So, why are we so interested in native vegetation? And it provides stability and reduces erosion. So, when we're first building these restoration projects, we're exposing soil. And this is Gully Park, and you're seeing what it looked like before in the top picture. You're seeing it just constructed in the middle picture, and then you're seeing it 5 years old. And so this is a completely restored site. We still inspect it. We still do some minor maintenance, but this site's doing fantastic. Most of what you're looking at is native vegetation, but we've gone in there. So again, when you say, well, we want to get rid of the invasives, in this particular case, we still have to go in there and watch for different invasives that are going to come in and take over our site. So we still manage the site for invasives. Sometimes we bring volunteers out. Now this is just on our river restoration project. Recently, some folks wanted to come in and remove all the bush honeysuckle at Gully Park. And they called us and we said, well, you need to stay away from our river restoration because we've already managed that for invasives. And so when we go in and work on invasives, we're there with it on our project part. But there was, so where I said you guys couldn't work was on the terrace where there was like a lot of Japanese honeysuckle. But there are places that it actually screens. There's still some steep banks where we didn't do river restoration. And it actually, if you remove it, it creates a safety issue. So we told them not to remove it there. Also, we chose to leave the bush honeysuckle in some places where it was actually holding in the bank. And so one of the things, if you're going to remove invasives, you have to have a plan. So if I remove this invasive, what do I want in its place? And so in some cases, what we did was we planted something next to the plants that were obvious that you couldn't remove, or you could actually create a streambank erosion problem. And then later you can go in and remove that. In some cases you can cut the plant off and poison it and leave the roots in place. But you have to still make sure that you're replacing it with something so when that completely dies off, you've got some other roots in there to hold the bank in. So anyway, this is a good photo because it shows you the progression of a river restoration and going to having a restored bank with natives. But that nice looking bank, I hope you guys think it's a nice looking bank. We are out there quite a bit, and our project was over with in quite some time ago, but we're out there quite a bit making sure that we don't have invasives come in. So the problem with mimosa, there's a lot of mimosa trees out there. And when, like I think it was year 2, so you see the newly constructed, at first we had like all of our native grasses coming up. And I'm going to go into how we did that. But, I think it was like 2 years later, all of a sudden there was 1 million tiny little mimosas coming up. And mimosas, maybe when they're an inch high, you can pull them up, but they're 1.5 inches high, you can't pull them up. They just break off. And so those guys are strong. So we were out there with little, something to dig into the ground to get them up. And fortunately, we had enough natives that we did a good job because we don't have a lot of mimosa on. It was this particular bank where all of a sudden we had this hatching of mimosas. And I think, the healthy native vegetation we had there shaded it out. But you can kind of see, you guys, sort of the analogy here is if you go in there and you just remove everything and you have bare soil, you got a good chance that other invasives are just going to follow you. So you need a plan to replace it. And then there's also the idea that there's ornamentals that are not invasive, but people like them. So you have to take that into consideration. And you're gonna have to do some education, like if you do wanna get rid of if you decide to get rid of all the mimosa in town, which would be fine with me, but it's not fine with that landowner. Okay?
Richard, do you have a question?
Oh, well, did you say it's okay to ask questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been waving my hand around.
I'm sorry, Richard, I was trying to finish that thought.
You had a pretty good test down there a few weeks ago, didn't you? Didn't you have a pretty hefty little water event?
At Gully Park?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about a few weeks ago. We've had a lot of hefty events through Gully Park. And I've got a slide to make that point, so I'll show you that. So, why natives? Provides wildlife habitat, cover and food, shade, improves the aesthetics, increases the conservation value of the site, and then pleasing to general public, supports future efforts. Now that's, you have to do it tastefully, because I've heard of people going in and building stream restorations or changing riparian management from, maintained to native, and then people complain because they want it to look more manicured. So we try to redo we try to do our sites where it still looks nice. Like we'll have at this site, if you go in mid to late April, we've got so many beautiful wildflowers blooming at that time, and we have different series of wildflowers blooming through the summer. So, but we put a lot of time and energy into our design to make sure that that's happening, because we don't want to get complaints, that somebody wants us to mow our natives. And as far as I know, we haven't gotten any complaints at Gully Park. Yes.
So does the city manage that at all, or you guys manage
We
that?
manage the stream restoration part. And that's why they contacted us when people wanted to remove the Japanese honeysuckle.
Gotcha.
And so there were certain ones that, we did let them remove that were close to our site, but we also helped them to not take out the ones that are acting as a screen right now. So for years, the city's been using those Japanese honeysuckles for screens to some degree. So they wanted to open up and be able to see the creek. Well, again, you have to think about, does that really work? So you need a plan. It's good to remove bush honeysuckle, but you need a plan to be able to do it in a way that's going to meet everybody's objective.
Sandy, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
You work real closely, like, with the city parks department, or who,
Mhm.
as far as where to mow and where not to mow, that kind of stuff? Is that who you
Yeah,
deal with? Or
yeah. I mean, they, early on they mowed a couple of things, but they don't mow our stuff. And at Sweetbriar, instead of, so when we did Gully Park, we did that fence, and they don't really like fences. So the deal with natives right next to a mowed area, like in a park or in any public place, people are more accepting of them if they appear to be containerized. So that fence, I think, is the reason why we don't get a lot of complaints out there. And but the city didn't really like the fence. So at Sweetbriar, we did these little, and they came up with this idea, these little stakes that say no mow areas, and it kind of creates a boundary. Anyway, it gives people an explanation why it's not mowed. So, so why native plants versus not just the invasives, but other ornamentals that people use? Over time, they've adapted to the climate, geology, and soils of the site. They're more drought resistant, so they require less maintenance. Non-native plants have the potential to become invasive and becoming a nuisance. And then, one of the best things about native plants, if you're trying to restore habitat, is it helps to maintain diversity, because there's many biota that may depend on certain native plants to exist. So if you want to keep the diversity of your ecosystem, native plants is the way to go. So when we build our river restorations, we use this technique called towwood, but we go to a lot of effort for establishing the plants where we do these, what we call soil mattress lifts, and I'm not going to go a lot into how we do that, and I'm going to skip over to the plants, but this just shows, basically we've built at this site everything that you're looking at, except for where that equipment is, has been constructed, and we're in the process of establishing the soil lifts on top. So I'll just go back to this one. See all the wood and rock underneath the soil mattresses? That's already constructed here, okay? And what we've done is we've stabilized the toe, we've created a small floodplain, and now we're finishing it in a way that we can grow vegetation on it, because if we want this thing to last 50 years plus, the vegetation is what's going to hold this there for the long haul. And so this is just showing the construction of the soil lifts. And then once they're constructed, we have to establish vegetation on them. So we put live stakes of willow and buttonbush and witch hazel and different plants that are native that we can establish that way. And then we also put a mixture of native grass and wildflower seeds. And again, it's specific not only to this ecoregion, but also to, a lot of times, to the area. So we look for what's growing in the area and try to duplicate what's there. And we talk
by area, you mean just like what,
That's
right
right,
up, what
like-
it's right up and down the river
Yes.
from there? Yeah.
Yep. So, and then we also spend time with the local ecologist, because we don't want to plant something and somebody show up and say, we cannot believe you planted that, and it's going to take over, you know, all of Fayetteville, you know. So, let's see. So then after we've got those soil mattresses constructed, we're planting the soil mattresses themselves with live stakes, and or we'll use small potted plants or bare root seedlings. And so this is just some examples of planting in the erosion control fabric that we use to make those soil lifts.
Where do you get your native plants from?
That was my question.
Oh, all right, Sam,
And that's really it's really a challenge. I mean, because like when we first started purchasing the native plants, there really wasn't anyone local to buy them from. We called all the nurseries, and they had like 2 trees, you know. There's a little bit more available locally, but most of our sources we found in Missouri. They were way ahead of the game. There is a lady, it's called Pine Ridge in London, Arkansas, and she's got a pretty good selection, but she's a lot more expensive. There's actually nurseries that specialize in Missouri on native plants, so they have really good prices. And
I have found the Missouri Conservation Service.
that's one of the places we buy from. We
You
buy
can-
from several places.
You can order for $1 a piece little sprigs
The
of
bare root seedlings.
bare root seedlings.
Yeah, and we
Native plant. They come in lots of 10, so your minimum buy is $10. But they have probably a selection of 70 or 80 or 90, maybe even different trees and shrubs
yeah, and
that
those
are
guys
Ozark specific that you can order.
those guys right there came from them.
Okay.
So we buy from them.
Yeah, I really
We
like
get the
them.
bare root seedlings from them because they're inexpensive and they have a lot of what we need. But we
Mhm.
don't pick from their list. We know what we want, and then we call to find out who has them. All right, turn that off. So, but there's a couple other nurseries in Missouri that we work with, and then there's different places that we get seed from too. And a lot of times, mostly in Missouri, a lot of times there's a place in Arkansas that you can get, it's actually local, but all they're doing is buying seed from someplace else and mixing it here. And the other thing we started doing with volunteers from Fayetteville is we go and collect, some of our sites are old enough that we can go and collect seed, so that's really fantastic. So we go and collect the native seeds, and it's just a really fun activity, and we work with the different watershed groups to come up with the volunteers to do that. And it's cheaper, but, you know, we had like, I think about 10 volunteers, and we collected Virginia wild rye out at the wastewater plant. There's a great source of it out there. And we got maybe couple of pounds. And, you know, you could buy that for maybe $30 or something. So, but it's much better, it's better to collect your own seed because that's what's adapted here, that's what's working here. So that is much more valuable than what we could have purchased. Okay, so this is part of establishing natives. So, you know, even though I'm talking about this in the context of a stream restoration, if you guys go in and remove a bunch, you're going to, like I said, you're going to have to replace it. So some of this will apply. But what we do is we mix the native seed with a nursery crop because it's going to come up immediately and we need the erosion control, and it helps keep the invasives from coming in right after you disturb the soils. So all that green you see coming up there, that's the nursery crop. And it usually takes, you know, the first year we'll see a pretty good stand of natives, but it takes 2 to 5 years to really get native grasses established. You'll see many more wildflowers coming in the second year, and then you'll just get more and more every year. And this is this is a project we did with the city of Fayetteville. This is a riverbank. It was 500 feet long. It was eroding about 14 feet per year, 3,600 tons of sediment per year on average. And that's the upper picture. That's the lower picture is right after we construct it. And then the picture on the right, it's about 6 months old. And actually, no, it's about a year old there. And if I had a picture from this summer, it would be a year and a half, but I didn't have time to update that.
Are those sycamores volunteers, or did you plant those?
Okay, those sycamores are coming up from cuttings that we put in as we built it. And there are some sycamore trees that we did plant, but the cuttings, some of the cuttings are doing just as good as the plants. So what we have found is bare root seedlings do really good. Potted, when it comes to trees, they actually do better. The smaller they are, the better they'll do. And if you can spend like $50 on a bigger tree, and you can do, you know, a smaller tree or a bare root seedling, and they'll probably meet at some time in terms of their size. The bare root seedling will catch up. Or the smaller, they adapt better. So that bigger one has a harder time adapting. Maybe it's kind of like the old dog and the new trick thing. I don't know. They take longer to adapt.
I think there's greater transplant shock too. The older,
exactly,
the older
right.
the tree is,
It
and
just
so it takes longer to recover.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is just about the fabrics we use, and I'm going to skip over that. So on the seeding, I think this is worth noting. So we use wheat, oats. So wheat is for the cooler part of the year. Oats is for the warmer part of the year. You have to be careful on that nursery crop because you can get something that can become noxious. So
When you say nursery crop, what is that?
a nursery crop is something that it's an annual. So we use the weed out there, but it's going to go away. It's not going to stay after maybe definitely after 3 years it'll be gone, and sometimes.
So it doesn't reseed itself?
It will reseed itself, but it'll stop. There's an end to it. Like if you go out to Gully Park, we used wheat for the nursery crop, and you might find a few little wheat stands still around there, and that project's 5 years old. But when we first finished, the whole thing was covered in wheat, so it goes away. But what it does is it helps keep those invasives from coming in. It creates like a nursery environment for the natives to come up.
Okay, that's why.
So I've got natives. Yeah, that's why it's called a nursery.
And it comes up quick and provides fast erosion control too, right?
Exactly, and that's why we're interested, because we're working in the river channel. So we want something that's going to come up quick. This is just getting into application rates and costs. This is based on the. Yes, Connie.
One other thing that we talked about, and it was a few months ago when we did this, but it was how to get rid of invasives, and you did talk about you gotta watch it before you just do that. But when you are getting rid of invasives, and I think you and I talked about this a little bit, but, do you take a purist outlook on that, or do you have to use chemicals sometimes when you're getting rid of invasives? Will you talk, are you gonna
Yeah,
talk
I'm
about
gonna
that?
get to that slide.
Okay,
just a
I
minute.
just wanted to make sure you would get to that, because we did talk about it.
So another way to get natives established, if you've disturbed the soil, and we use this technique in our river restorations, and it's fantastic, and is you actually transplant a native sod mat. So you actually dig up an area of sod that's native plant. Now, a lot of times you're going to introduce some invasives when you do that, so you try to find places with, there are invasives everywhere. It's really sad. It's hard to find stands of native vegetation. But so in an urban environment, we really don't do much sod mat transplants because there's just not any natives. But in our rural projects, we can do this. And so you can see it on the left, the sod mat in the piece of equipment, and then he's placing it, and now it's placed. And so just to give you an example of how effective this is, the upper left, constructed floodplain, so that's bare soil. We just got finished building that. And then we installed the native sod. Those are all sod mats. And then 1 year later, it looks like it's been there forever, right? And it still looks like that. That project's 4 years old. And so in this case, we've got an example where we use the soil mattress lifts. That's the bottom, that's the white arrows. But look at and the one on the left is the bare, that's right after construction. But if you look, the installed native sod mats, that's 6 months old, and you can't tell that we did anything over there. And that's all river cane, which is native to our rivers here. Hey, Aubrey.
So if you do that and you're removing that sod mat from another location, what do you do in the location that you have removed those natives from? Are you also...
That's a really great question. And
you don't want to know the answer.
No, and this is what I told the people that are doing this kind of work that I presented this to, you've got to reseed it with your mix of nursery crop and native seeds. And it's your responsibility to make sure invasives don't come in over there.
Right.
So the only time, I don't see you guys doing this technique. We have to do it because we're on a river, and when we build these projects, we've had floods 3 days after we were finished. So that's why we're interested in something that's going to come up fast. But I think it's a good example for you guys if you're going to get into trying to establish more natives and take out invasives. You got to understand what you're up against. So somebody could do this technique and they don't reseed the areas where they removed. And you don't ever want to remove material that is acting as an erosion. You've got to find the right place before you can do this. And but anyway, I think it's good examples of why you need to think it through. And if you do create an invasive problem, you have to go in there and do something about it. It's going to cost money. Well, you don't have to, but you should. So this was an area where we made wetlands out of the old river channel. So we've created a new channel as the river's moved over. And you can see all the bare ground. And now, if you look at the bigger bottom picture, we established all those natives with seed. There's only a few plants that we actually planted by hand. So you can do a lot with native seed. And but a lot of our success has to do with our source of our seed, and I think maybe the next slide is this. You got to make sure you're planting everything in the right place. So the indigo bush in the upper right corner, that needs full sun, and then the wild hydrangea is shade and stream side. So if you plant the wild hydrangea in full sun, it's not going to live very long. it's hard to get that one established no matter where you plant it. But so when you're doing your native plants and seeds, you got to understand your ecoregion, your physiographic region. You need to work with the local experts to develop a native plant list. There are a lot of generalized lists out there based on state or county. Don't use those because you may be introducing something that really isn't right for your site. Understand plant sites' need and plant accordingly. So that's the shade, sun, streamside, floodplain, terrace. You have plants that live in those different areas. And then understand the application, urban, park, natural areas, school, rural. So understand application includes people's attitudes. We like to make sure that when we're doing work for like the city of Fayetteville and park users, that we're making everybody happy. That's part of our job. So if you are going to, like I said, when the guy said, I love mimosas, then I just dropped it, you know, and I knew that we're going to fight new mimosas coming in, but there's always going to be a mimosa tree there. So, I mean, it's up to the city, but if you're going to decide to really get rid of all the invasives in Fayetteville, you're going to have to do a huge education program to help people adjust to the idea of no more. I mean, the other guy liked Johnson grass. Yes, there's somebody out there that loves Johnson grass.
Better or worse than Bermuda grass?
You don't want to hear me talk about Johnson grass. My husband is like, you got to start liking Johnson grass because it's everywhere. And it is everywhere. And so, you know, you also have to understand, well, what are you up against? Are you really going to ever get rid of all the Johnson grass? And it finally occurred to me the other day, we're working out at the airport project, and, you know, the first couple of cuttings is this beautiful Bermuda grass hay or whatever. But, like, after, I think, like 2 cuttings, all of a sudden the whole field is full of Johnson grass. And I'm going to try on my little narrow river restoration not to have any Johnson grass, but I've got this whole field next to me. So I'm just going to have to live with it. We're going to have some Johnson grass in our river restoration. But, you know, the bright side is that there is a ton of natives along that river. So I have confidence that we're going to be able to really get a good stand of natives.
Could the natives take over the Johnson grass? Is that a possibility?
There are some. There's gamma grass, and we have planted. And Dr. West from the University of Arkansas, he's no longer there, but he taught us this, that gamma grass can outcompete Johnson grass. So we've got quite a bit of gamma grass planted at Gully Park on the upstream end, and so we're testing that theory out because there's Johnson grass up there too. So cost, this is just, so yes, you can take invasives out with volunteer labor. But what are you guys going to replace it with? So you need to think about, there is a cost to this idea of managing. And I would say instead of, it is invasive removal, but really I would like to hear it called invasive management, because you're never going to get rid of all the invasives. And so if you think of it as invasive management, then you don't feel like you're defeated all the time. You feel like, okay, I'm working with these invasives. They're going to be there, but we're going to have fewer. You're going to have to irrigate to establish natives any time, just initially.
How many years do you,
We
on average,
irrigate
does it take?
At least one,
Yeah.
and depending on the weather, we may not have to irrigate the second year. And if a drought comes in, we may irrigate a project that's 3 or 4 or 5 years old, if we don't want to lose a tree. You know,
Yep.
but it's not going to be very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what you guys have all been waiting for, the invasive removal slide. And so, our Gully Park River Restoration, from town, you guys all know where Gully Park is, and that's Neocosco Creek. So from township to, there's a wastewater pipe. There's like an upstream section that was not part of our project. And what was nice about that upstream section, it was already stable, but it was full of invasive. And we didn't have any funding to do this, but we started on our own working with the city to manage that upstream site for invasive. So sometimes river restoration doesn't require, these big engineer designs. It can be just a vegetation management. And that was the case here. So those are city workers, and we went in there and we removed the bush honeysuckle and privet, and there were too many trees in there, so we thinned it out also. And
What is your method of removing bush honeysuckle and privet?
okay, so it depends on the site. In this case, the city staff was really good, the maintenance people. They suggested that we cut it first, and this worked great, but you do not want to do this at every place, okay? It was great for this, because this is like a flat stream bed.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about, there's no eroding banks. So they came in and cut it out, and you can see they're putting all the branches, so it went to mulch. And then we came in with a track hoe and pulled out the stumps. But the deal is, it's easy to lose those stumps, so you got to really be paying attention. Once you cut all the branches off, you can miss some of the stumps. So later, we did pretty good. We only missed like a couple of them. Later, we went in and we used chemicals to kill the other stumps. And so that gets so critical to remove shrubs and trees before construction. So when we're doing a river restoration project, we try to save all the natives that are there. So we identify the natives. So you really don't want to be killing natives if you don't have to. But they could be creating an infrastructure problem, so that's the time to take them out. But we go in and remove the invasives before we start construction. And a lot of times we cut off the branches and then we paint the stumps with the poison. And that works really good. And let's see, do not remove if critical for holding the stream bank. I mean, you can if it looks like that the root system, even if you kill it, is still going to hold in the stream bank for a long time. But you really want to know what you're doing there, because you don't want to start an erosion problem. And first year following construction, remove, treat 2 to 3 times. So if we're working on a site to remove invasives, we're looking at having to go in there, and we pull a lot by hand. So there's certain ones, like Queen Anne's lace, you can pull up by hand. But that's going to be another one that people put that in flower arrangements.
Is that an invasive? I didn't even know that.
See,
but
see
I
what
like
I
Queen
mean?
Anne.
Yeah, you like, see, that's what I'm talking about.
That's not an Arkansas plant.
No.
I'll be darned.
And so, and the ecologists don't like it, but a lot of people do like it.
Mm-hmm.
But, and the first time I learned that it was invasive, I was bummed.
Me too.
But anyway, we pull it up at our river restoration sites. But you guys have to decide that, and it makes, one seed head makes thousands of seeds. I mean, it's not a good one to leave. So you pull them up, and then you got to go back. And what you'll find is if you stay on top of it and go out there every year, usually you're only pulling a few up. But if you let it go, they'll start building back up again. But the first year, you're going out 2 or 3 times. And you can treat Queen Anne's lace with chemicals, but it's one that you can pull up. The one that you can't pull up is Lespedesia. That one, it creates 1 million seeds. It has a fairly deep root system, and you pretty much have to spray it to kill it. Johnson grass is really, you can't pull it up. You have to either outcompete it or spray it, because when you break off the roots, it comes back 10 times stronger. So like when you pull it up, you're going to always leave a little piece in the ground. Well, that little piece is upset with you, and it's going to like populate even more. So, and one of the things we do with Johnson grass is we go in and we cut the seed heads off. But when you do that, you need to collect them in a bag and don't put them in the compost, or they're going to be somebody else's problems. We put them in plastic bags and we put them in the garbage.
We had that problem at our elementary school. Terry Lane, you guys all know, she and I worked together, and she really was the force behind it. But over at Butterfield Trail, we put in the rain garden butterfly habitat with Terry and Cindy Cope and everybody, and we brought in truckloads and truckloads of city compost. And there's just no telling what was in it. We never thought about that, but yeah, we had Johnson grass like crazy come up later.
There you have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still.
Don't, so if you're cutting off the seed heads, put them in a plastic bag and put them into solid waste
Don't put 'em
disposal,
in.
or burn them. We burn them a lot of times.
Don't compost.
And, let's see, second year follow-up 2 times, following years follow-up once a year. Cost is labor, great exercise for trained volunteer. I put train because of what I'm talking about. If somebody's cutting off seed heads and just throwing them to the side, well, that's not gonna help. Or if they're putting them in the mulcher, that's not good either. So, you know, it looks like I didn't put anything about the chemical removal, using chemicals, but, you guys have to decide whether you're gonna do that. We decided to do it because even with the chemicals, invasives are just overwhelming. And you can get, you need to hire people that are certified and trained and understand natives and invasives and, know what's gonna be dangerous to the streams. I mean, there's different chemicals you can use that are less harmful. So, when you're working near a stream versus not near a stream. So, there are chemicals that target particular plants, because if somebody goes in there and just sprays, they might kill the natives.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to this. If you get into the chemicals, you need to you need to work with somebody who really understands what they're doing,
And
which
who
is
would-
what we do.
Who would that be?
There's a couple different entities out there, so I can pass that on.
That work with,
Natives, yeah, that are also
So they're
from the ecological field.
okay, so they're not coming in with Roundup. They're,
I don't,
they're
you
just.
know, again, we're actually working on getting one of our folks trained because it's become expensive and learning more about it, but there could be a case when Roundup is appropriate.
Works okay.
So I'm not gonna say that it's not, but I'm not an expert on which chemicals to use.
Okay.
But I can't imagine trying to do this without them. I mean, but the thing, if you don't wanna spray, is you paint. So you can even paint plants, you know, if you wanna make sure that you don't get it in the water or get it on other plants. There's ways to, when you're in a sensitive habitat, to minimize that. So, this goes back to, I don't know if it was, I think it was Richard's question or somebody's question. This just shows the design parameters and, the size of the, project. So I've got 4 projects up there. Gully Park is only a 1.25 square mile watershed. Our design discharge, which we call the bankful discharge, is 130 CFS, but we've observed 660 CFS out there. So you can see why we're putting nursery crop out
Cubic
there.
feet per second.
Thank you.
It's huge.
That's a lot of water.
Everybody in here, even if we were all holding hands, we would die at 660 cubic feet per second. We could not be in that water. So the 130 would be tough. And then the recorded max discharge there is 739. So we haven't seen the max, but that's, you know, 660 is enough. So the West Fork, the bankful discharge is 725. We've had anywhere from 18 to 14 times that discharge. And then Mullins Creek is our project at the university, and it's just crazy, crazy, crazy out there how much water comes through, but it goes away really fast.
What's the definition of bankful discharge?
Bankful is the incipient point of flooding. So what it means is it's the place where the water reaches a floodplain and there's some relief in the channel. The problem with the channels in Arkansas, especially urban channels, they're incised, so they don't necessarily have these massive floodplains. So you're usually dealing with a lot more energy, especially in an urban environment. You are dealing with more energy than if it was in a rural environment.
Because we've tried so hard to keep the water in the channel, because we want to build in the floodplain.
Right.
And we've diverted so much water from our development sites
Yeah,
to
and
the channel.
water leaves the pervious surfaces so much faster at a higher rate.
Yes, Richard.
On your Mullins Creek, you've altered your effective base. They've put in a different, structure down there for the access to the apartments up on the hill. So that'll all be a fresh look. You'll have a different situation. I think they've opened it up so it'll flow better.
Where was that? When did they do that? Because I was just out there the other day.
Well.
And that's the other thing about
You know
urban
the
projects.
drive that goes up to what are the apartments
The
on
view?
Yeah, the view.
Yeah, they have.
Oh, you're talking about downstream of the project, they've
Yeah,
changed it?
Most of these flows, geologically, hydrologically, they're controlled by what's called the effective base.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, I see, yeah, right.
whatever reach of stream you're
Did they
looking
change
at,
that?
well, they put in a larger structure down there. So
Okay.
I think you've got a gauge station right there. You should be able to pick up on the story pretty quick.
Okay. Okay.
The one that goes under Martin Luther King didn't change, but
Mhm.
the one just after it
Okay,
got changed.
okay.
Which is down from the project, is that right? Is
It's
that down-
downstream of the
yeah, that's what
project.
it's called.
So, then the White River project, the design flow is 12,000 CFS. It's been up to 13,000, and we think the recorded max is 60,000. So just to give you an idea of what we have to handle at our project sites and why vegetation is so important to us. But some people are like, well, just plant something that's great for erosion control, and, but we want our sites to be ecological restorations too. So that's why we put so much emphasis on the natives and managing the invasives.
For a point of reference, 60,000 CFS is probably what's going through the Arkansas River right now at like Fort Smith.
Okay.
So imagine that being crammed into the West Fork White River. It's a lot of water.
That's just another picture of all those sycamores that you're looking at there are from cuttings, and they're just like a year old, maybe. Yeah, they're like a year old. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, sycamores are off. Where's that?
That's the White River
That's the White
project.
River.
And let's see. This was just an example of how we'll use natives to fix problem areas. So we maintain these sites, we go and inspect them. If we see a problem area, if you fix them early on, you got a better chance of not having a bigger problem later. And we were having a problem downstream of the structure, and we used gamma grass and willow. And actually, if you guys go to the downstream end of the project, we got a great stand of gamma grass now. We think, we haven't had a big flood through there since we did it, but we think we have fixed the problem there. So you can use your native vegetation to address scour, and you don't have to go with some exotic that grows really fast. And this is just an example where we put in a lot of willow and buttonbush stakes, because if we didn't do something here, eventually we were going to have problems here. So pretty much, this is really more about stream restoration. So, you know, all I can say in reference to this is, I think you guys do need to think about cost and a plan. And Parks called me recently and asked if we would help develop a plan for when people wanted to volunteer out at Gully Park. Let's have a plan so everybody knows, you know, how to. So I'm going to work with them to do a plan for Gully Park. And, so those would be the main points, that it needs planning. You do need to think about a budget associated with it. And, you need to understand the natives as much as you understand the invasives. And you need to think about people's attitudes and the education and the outreach that needs to come along with this.
I'm trying to remember what started this about invasive plants. take me back 6 months to when that happened. Does anybody, Aubrey, were you talking about that, or
We've been,
there was
World
some?
Peace Wetland Prairie, we've been fighting them for over a decade.
Right.
We were taking them out in the 90s before it was city property, and we were trying to document the things that would come up. And you clear out the Japanese honeysuckle and some of these other invasives, and that soil's already got the plants in there. They're just been suppressed. And you only mow or burn if you have a big site that's rural. That kind of land, prairie land, primarily we're talking about, only in winter. It's still a little early this year, but you should do any of that before March to suppress the non-natives, and you'll see. And this past year was one of the best on Pinnacle Prairie that we've talked about before. So, because of the rain and so forth, and no mowing during the whole growing season.
So Aubrey's point about fighting them for 10 years, like what you're looking at there, and there's mostly, I mean, we've got a few invasives in there, but that's mostly natives, but we're managing the invasives, and that's the only reason why there's so many natives there right now. One of the worst ones at this that we've had to tackle, not at this, it's the midsection of the Gully Park project, is the vetch. The vetch came in really quick, and the vetch really liked the drought. Like, all of our sites, we were doing pretty good with invasives, not having them, and then we had that drought last summer, and the invasives came back like crazy. So I guess they didn't mind. Yeah, the crown vetch. It rears, it's pretty. I mean, we were pulling it up, and some of the park users were like, "What are you pulling that up for?" We like it. But it's easiest to see it when it's blooming, and that's when it gets your attention. So, and it is pretty. I like it from that point of view.
People use it for immediate control.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's everywhere. It's everywhere, just like.
But if I may,
But I'm done. But these are all examples of natives at some of our projects.
but if I may, the word Lespedeza and vetch, all those have native equivalents, so you need to know the difference. They're good native.
Yep, and Aubrey's great at knowing.
Honeysuckle, too. They're good honeysuckle plants.
Especially
native
the prairie
plants.
plants. He knows them.
Well, they're actually native bush honeysuckle that's very rare because of the non-native. You can find it out in the big forest areas. Yeah, that's what we want to see.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that there's not really a good source for native plants locally. So, are our nurseries selling invasive species? Is that contributing to the problem that we have here?
Absolutely.
Do they sell the bush honeysuckle? They don't sell that at the nursery, do they?
On the Omni tour, a garden tour a few years ago, a lady showed us how in 2 years her beautiful China honeysuckle had grown up into this thing. I mean, she bought it. She didn't even know she could get them cheap. They would want to get rid of them.
I don't know what all the nurseries are selling, but
I have seen English ivy sold at our farmers market.
oh yeah, English ivory and there's that. What's that other ground cover that Vinca? Is it Vinca?
Oh, yeah.
Vinca and
Very
yeah,
wonderful.
that one's
Guanamus.
really, you can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
You kinda
And I
have to
take
live
it
with
that's
that.
not native, huh?
No, and you probably planted it, and I'll just confess, like a long time ago, I planted some of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everybody's planted it, So, yeah, I
The
guess there
ground
probably
cover.
are, but there's a lot of non-natives that are not invasive. That's the
Oh.
thing. So that's what,
So how do you find this out other than having an expert come in and talk about this, or Aubrey or something? I mean, is there?
well, that's what I'm saying, you guys are starting a process here. This is
Okay.
a
So
process
this is the
that,
process of getting that information and education.
and beginning, and
Right.
it's,
I
you're
need
not
it
gonna,
first.
Well,
and there needs to be a plan.
Yeah, and,
Yeah,
you know, it's
that's a
just
good
something
point.
that we need to be talking to our nurseries about and get them to stop selling the most invasive of these species, as well as educating the public about.
And what are non-invasive, non-native plants, which would be better than the other?
They're the best if they're, annuals that won't
Then you're talking about
reseed
annuals,
themselves.
yeah, okay.
Even, but, Holland Wildflower Farm has a lot of natives, including basket flowers, which got popular this year when I showed some of the plants to people who photograph wildflowers. And,
Holland Farms here in
Holland,
Fayetteville?
well, it's out near, Goshen, or what's the other town out there? Yeah, it's just off the highway out there. I can tell you later.
Okay.
But it's on the internet. You can
Well, I know that you have to get going, Sandy, but I want to say thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming and talking with us.
Okay, you're welcome, and if you guys want to talk again, later, that's fine. I mean, I'm willing to come back and we can be more focused on, the planning process for this. I mean, to think about a city having a plan for invasive management is
That's pretty
interesting. And, you know, thinking about providing education, what you're suggesting to the nurseries. I don't know if that'll make a difference or not, but it's at least a beginning. I like that idea a lot, but they might resist initially.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you guys, I have like fact sheets on all of our local stream, not all of them, but most of our stream restoration projects, so, it's a set, so I'll leave you guys with a copy of that. And, okay, so there's, that way.
Thank you.
While you're doing that, if I may, there is a book you can get at Nightbird and other places called Bringing Nature Home.
Oh,
You know, something else about Johnson grass, that, just to give you guys a heads up, the farmers like it. They will cut that third, so I was bringing up the whole hay
that
thing.
hay thing?
Yeah, it comes up later, and they get another cutting of hay,
Yeah.
and so that's, you know, we work with a lot of farmers, and so, you know, we kind of tiptoe around the Johnson, and I'm always like, would you really like that Johnson grass? I'm like, oh, yeah. So, like, well, okay. Okay, thank you, guys.
Well, thank you so
very much,
much.
Sandy.
Appreciate you coming and talking to us.
So Bringing Nature Home, and that tells about, okay.
It's, by an entomologist in Delaware. Tallamy, Tallamy is the last name of it.
Tallmy.
Tallamy, I believe.
Okay.
The, city, arborist or forester, whatever that position, are they in on this any, or?
Oh,
should they be?
forestry, yeah.
Yeah. They've
That's-
got a position
Right.
still, don't they, at the city?
That's something that we'll need
Urban
to
forester or whatever.
talk about. You know, I think since we've reached the end of the year, and we're going to have the 4 new members coming on board, and I did want to introduce Joanna Pollock, who snuck in a little after we started. She's also going to be a new member. Did you want to introduce yourself and say anything about?
Oh, well, hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here and glad to be nominated, and that was a great presentation, so that's the kind of meetings we have. Good to me.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your role? If you
Yeah,
want to say
sure.
more?
Well, I've known Sarah, I guess I'm at the Green Economy Group, and I've just started a doctoral program in environmental dynamics at the university, focusing on community resilience planning, and I've been active in numerous volunteer organizations, nonprofits, for environmental conservation purposes and climate change awareness and things like that. So, you know, I'm really passionate about, you know, doing what we can to protect our environment and our city, and I'm excited about working with the community and the city in this capacity.
What's your undergraduate degree?
My undergraduate is in nutrition. So I worked in public health for 10 years, and then went back to school and got a master's in counseling and focused on ecotherapy and the importance of the connection that we have of biophilia with the natural world and how that's good for our mental health and actually probably even necessary. And then moved into this environmental language program.
Nice.
And Joanna's been a big part of Omni Center, activist there, also for Sierra Club and Tricycle Farm, and I couldn't begin to name them all. So.
Yes, well, we're glad to have you. And then we'll have 2 more new members joining us at our next meeting. And so,
There's the list of
Yes.
all our new members.
Robert Moore and Angela Wisely. I don't think I know Robert, but Angela has been the facilitator at the Green Economy Group for the last 9 months or so and has done a great job. So
I kind of can tell you a little real quickly. I think Robert, he's the education position, isn't he, with the Boston Mountain Solid Waste and city kind of share him or something?
Well, he's
Or
just
I think
with
Boston Mountain pays him, but
in Washington County.
in the county, okay.
okay.
And so that's, yeah, he's the education position that, like Sophie used to, is Sophie on this committee for a while? Sophie Stevens?
Sophie has, not that I know.
Okay, I guess not. Just same circles. And then Angela, yeah, she's with Viridian, which is the same company John Coleman went to. So she's in the lead, design and all that kind of business.
Yeah, so it looks like we've got a good team coming up. So for our January meeting, I would like to get us to all kind of spend some time deciding what our focus areas are going to be for the next year. Because we've got a lot of projects that have been percolating, with the invasive species removal. There's a lot of growing support for doing more with our low-impact development guidelines that we had developed, maybe making that more mandatory citywide. So I'd really just like to gauge the interest of the group on what we want to pursue as we move forward to the next year. So that next meeting is going to be on January 27th.
So our standing meeting time is the 3rd Monday of the month at 5:30 in this room. But for January and February, January's 3rd Monday is Martin Luther King Day. February's 3rd Monday is President's Day, which are both city holidays, so the city's closed. So the meeting will be moved back to the 4th Monday of those 2 months in this room at 5:30.
All right, and then I know that they're not here tonight, but I did want to say thank you to Terry Lane and Lori Yazwinski and Angela Albright and Joe Neal for their service.
Joe Kliklack.
Joe Kliklack. Oh, I thought it was Joe Neal. Joe Kliklack. For their service on the committee for 4 years. It's really incredible, and I really appreciate their efforts. So, is there anything else that we had on the agenda?
That was all, unless anyone else has any announcements for the good of the order.
If I may,
I don't need it, no.
the reason I'm late is I did 2 short takes over at Public Access TV. You can do those between 5 and 5:30 on Monday, or between 11 a.m. and noon on Thursday. Being old, I like to do them the first opportunity because I don't know if I'll feel like it by Thursday. But some weeks I do one on Monday and one on Thursday or whatever. But you can go over there and preach whatever you care about, whether it's environmental or not. You can go over there and speak your mind at those times every week. It's recorded for you, high-quality equipment, and you can show pictures, slides, or do whatever you want in 5 minutes, and you can do 2 of those a week, unless they get so busy they can't do it. And that's another way to get the message that you guys have. And it doesn't have to agree with what we're doing in here. You can talk about the same subject if you've got a different opinion, but this committee's doing pretty much what I am interested in the most in my life these days. So. And it's nice to have your sister in here. Did you confess the relationship?
Well, I know, I don't know if everybody, that's my sister. Sandy's my sister, so I didn't need her handout because I can get one, yes.
It's so funny, because like when you were sitting here, I was just, they kind of look a lot.
Yeah, well, same gene pool, yeah. Yes, I'm very proud of her. That's wonderful work.
And their father was a man who
You knew my dad.
provided me information when I was doing both outdoor and recreational pages for the Arkansas Democrat and later the Gazette before they were combined. he would call in the, what's it called, bocce.
Oh, bocce ball, yes,
Bocce
my
ball
dad started bocce
scores
ball
for
in,
his
in
club.
central Arkansas. He's from Sicily. So,
So I've known this family a while.
Yes, isn't that
Yeah.
funny? Did you ever play bocce with him?
No,
Oh, that,
no, I
you
think I got
missed
a
an
few pictures
opportunity, I'll tell you.
published, but
Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.